All right. Hello, everybody. I'm back. As you might know, I was applying for my graduate program in philosophy, which took, a lot of time, but everything went successful. I submitted my application, so the status of my soul is now pending. The answers will be in December. So now getting back to YouTube, right now I'm working on the mother's complex. I'm working on this idea of the mama's boy, which is something that transcends, pure psychology or psychoanalysis. This is a problem, this is an issue that is multifaceted. It has a cultural layer to it, both on a horizontal level and on a vertical level. Now, let me give you a quick introduction to how it relates maybe to this prevailing meme about how men are thinking about Rome. And I'll make another video about this meme, which is very interesting as it generally reflects the one major theme of my YouTube channel, since I speak about Spengler quite often. So now the mother's complex then is a type of neurosis or a type of condition of a psyche that affects males or affects females, but indirectly. In order for a female to have a mother's complex the same way mama's boys have it, then a female should have her animus being in the state of the devouring mother. Now, what is a mother's complex? A mother's complex is a type of condition when you are left into a form of executive dysfunction. This is a form of, Albanian, Eastern European thing about how, a mother never lets you to grow up or never lets you to individuate, never lets you to, to be independent and stuff. For example, those memes about, Eastern European moms, it has a philosophical layer to it. The mother's complex results from this form of executive dysfunction, whereby you can't actually grow up. This is an adolescent psychology, where you are left into this ever-present child mentality. And child mentality here is not a form of insult. It is not a form of disadvantage, but it is a condition of a psyche that is pretty effective and strong when it comes to science and philosophy, because you see, generally one major attribute of being mature, of being an adult, is that you no longer have this teenage wonder about the purpose of life, about is the secret of life, about thinking about interpersonal relationships, finding the deep truth, getting in touch with your unconscious. This is a teenage stuff. But you see 40-year-old men, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 30-year-old, people who are, this ever-present children, mostly of philosophical stock or of scientific stock, they are still wondering about the secrets of nature. You can perfectly have a physicist who is 55-year-old who stumbled upon Isaac Asimov's book. He was inspired by it, and now he comes up with a new hypothesis about the alternative world or about quantum mechanics. This is a real-life example. Because, generally, not growing up and not letting yourself become an adult is one form of intellectual wonder. Because you see, generally, adulthood is a condition whereby you are no longer interested in teenage stuff, listening to your emotions and thinking about what worldview is the true one or what religion is the true religion. This is the adult life is a type of life which has become purely practical. Things that you think about on a daily basis, everyday stuff, how to take care of my family, what to do with my car, my job, this and that. Theoretical aspect has been lost. And generally, one key aspect that von Franz talks about in her book, Puer Apelius, which is about the mother's complex, is that generally males with mother's complex, they create this intellectual realm so that they can escape the ever-growing belly of their mothers, of devouring mothers, that is always trying to swallow them up. to put them into the mode of executive dysfunction. And before getting into a more specific examples, let me explain what an executive dysfunction is, because this is an instance where abstract philosophy or psychoanalysis, which is not scientific, has some convergence, has some overlap with more scientifically rigorous vocabulary. Now, executive dysfunction is a concept that comes from neuropsychology. And generally, as Russell Berkeley explains it, it's something that affects people with ADHD, sluggish cognitive tempo, and other related disorders. This is a type of disorder where you can't be independent, where you can never find rest in one place, where you're always chasing a new high, where you are inherently opposed to, carrying responsibilities, where you're inherently opposed and you inherently protest against this idea of disciplinary regime. You are extremely annoyed when you are forced to do something. You are extremely annoyed when you have to follow, when you must follow instructions. And so generally, the thing about an executive dysfunction is these people can never stick to one thing. They always jump from one thing to another because they're always in the mode of chasing a new high, because they are running away from the devouring great mother. And the father here, which should play a role of grounding. As you might know, males who have grown up in father-absent households, they have a very weak left hemispheres. They don't have a strict sense of time. They are bad at geometry and math, and they are very ill-equipped when it comes to strict sciences. They concentrate on interpersonal relations and face-to-face conversation and humanities, let's say. So, mother's complex then is a form of attempt to evade responsibilities, evade abstract principles to which you need to conform your life to. And, the book that I'm working on right now states that one major symptom of mother's complex is that men become pilots. And it's very interesting because, pilot here is a symbol of trying to evade and trying to run from this ever-growing hips or the belly of the terrible mother that is trying to devour you into the sky, where mother cannot reach you. And the example of Howard Hughes, which I encourage you to research, Howard Hughes was, basically one of the first establishers of Hollywood hyperspace, along with Walt Disney. And the film Aviator, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is about Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes was suffering from the mother's complex. He had an overly present mother, and he was running from her. And this is the case, as it turns out, with other males who are pilots and who have this sort of, eagerness to escape the enclosed space into the infinitude. Now, generally, one concept that is related to this is this concept of the decline of culture, because generally when culture works, when culture is in its summer phase, when it's flourishing, it is guided by abstract metaphysics. But every time culture wanes, the terrible mother, the great mother, with its sensuality erupts. Nowadays, we live in this period of heightened emotionality. According to Marshall McLuhan, the first major eruption of this right hemisphere feminine type consciousness has emerged by introduction of TV station. TV, basically an old grainy TV. It basically activates your right hemisphere, and it turns you off from this masculine left hemisphere linear type reasoning. And there were neuroscientific studies that showed that basically old grainy TV was activating a right hemisphere as opposed to the left, and that after the introduction of TV, basically in the United States, dyslexia broke out, because dyslexia is one major symptom of mother's complex. As you see, people who are dyslexic, they do not conform to strict definitions, to linear from left to right type reasoning. These are people who are better maybe at empathy, at understanding, puns, similes, tropes, at understanding deep emotional connections and stuff, but they're not good at abstract reasoning whatsoever. Mother's complex then is very interesting from a cultural anthropology perspective, since one major aspect of hero's journey is that a male individuates, and individuation cannot happen without you slaying your mother. And the way it works is that your mother constantly tries to keep you in this uterine comfort. You are basically outsourcing your responsibility to her, and she is happy to do everything for you. And then basically you are left without independent skills. Now, the major brain area that is affected by executive dysfunction is prefrontal cortex, which is very symbolic because Athenian abstract thought here is noteworthy, since Athena was born from the head of Zeus. She's a product of a headache, and a headache that is taking place in the head of a sky god. And then his head is cut through by Hephaestus. Athena springs forth. What's interesting here is that now reproductive capabilities are wrested from females, and male is bringing forth a human being, a new goddess, or she's not even a goddess, she's a hermaphrodite because she transcends the binary nature of gender. And he basically brings Athena forth from his head, from rationality, from the mind proper. And the one thing that differentiates, let's say, most of the time the Eastern males and Western ones is this executive function. One legend that is, always very pervasive in Eastern countries about, Western people and Europeans and Americans is that they are very hardworking. These are people. If you inquire about German people in a third world, like where I come from, you are going to be told about how hardworking they are, how pedantic they are, how they're always on time, and they have a very strict understanding of time. All those myths, let's say, about Immanuel Kant, that people basically calibrated the precision of time based on how Immanuel Kant was conducting himself, for example, and stuff. And it's very interesting from that perspective, because you need to account for what it means to be productive, what it means to be focused, what it means to be a workaholic. And what it means is that it is a successful attempt at emancipating yourself from your mother, who's always trying to keep you in a form of comfort. And basically what happens is that there's always this back and forth about how in Eastern countries you can have males, like 40-year-old, 30-year-old, who are still living with their mothers, and then this whole idea about how it is unacceptable in the United States that males have to leave their households when they are 18 years old or 20. Although it is frequently criticized, it has a very important symbolic significance, because what it amounts to is this emancipation, whereby you are able to put work independently, where you are able to attain this form of abstract strata, the abstract strata of science, the abstract strata of philosophy, this form of independence, without outsourcing your responsibilities to your world parents. And generally, let's say temperamental differences here emerges. For example, mama's boys are frequently very charismatic, they're very emotional, they're good at face-to-face confrontations, they're good at verbal combat. Whereas on the other hand, people who have successfully transcended and emancipated from the ever-growing uterus of their mothers, they are more phlegmatic, they're mentally stable, they're good at technical fields, they're good at geometry, they're good at following abstract instructions, they're good at organizing time. It's very interesting that time and space, and how one relates to time and space, is a major characteristic of whether you are a mama's boy or you are not. So people who are not mama's boys and they have emancipated their mothers, they have a strict understanding of time, where time is money, where time can run out, where time is something that can be divisible into equal parts, where it's something that can be conceptualized as a set of spatial units, and that the fact that you need to conform to the time. And it's very interesting that such understanding of time, where time is segmented into equal parts, came through as a result of monk lifestyle, where Benedictine order completely emancipated itself from the feminine, since they basically prohibited any communication with females, considering them to be symbols of Satan. And because of their strict monastic lifestyle, they came up with this sort of strict time. And it is very interesting here that financial success of a country, of a nation, is extremely dependent on how the people of that nation understand time. Mostly in third world, they don't have a strict understanding of time. Most of the time, time is understood as something that goes along. You know, it's something that flows. It's like a river, you know, nothing strict and spatial about it. Right now, in countryside. Now, this is not a best example of the beauty of Georgian nature, or nature in Georgia, but you know, it's not like a countryside in the sense of like mountains, or says I'm like 20 minutes away from the city. Let me show you a Christian Orthodox church. Let me sneak in here for a second. Now, speaking about monastic lifestyle, people who emigrate to Western countries frequently have this form of cultural clash, saying that, you know, they emigrated in the West not because of their culture, but because of purely economic reasons. And mostly then there is this form of religious clash between people who emigrated in the West and, you know, aggressively brought forth their preconceived notions, and, you know, people who are in the West and trying to preserve their values in the context of multiculturalism. And one thing that more anti-Western people don't get, especially the ones who emigrate to Western countries, is that culture and economy isn't really that apart. It's like you don't just assume that you go to a Western country and you can think that, oh, you know, I don't really like their culture, I don't really like their people. It's just, you know, it's economically better, there are more financial opportunities, and I'm just gonna go there. Well, well, hold on a second. Well, I think that every single person who goes to a Western country as an immigrant should be forced to read Max Weber's Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Generally, the culture of the West is extremely tied to their economic success. It's in the West that you first got this form of abstract notion of time and space, which is at the basis of a capitalist spirit of workaholism, this form of calculative reasoning where you're trying to increase your income. And you're always viewing your life in terms of abstract quantitative paradigm. So most people need to, you know, who emigrate to the West and also manage to have anti-Western sentiments, well, they need to realize that it's not really reasonable to assume that West and their economic success is somehow disconnected from their culture and from their cultural beliefs and from their cultural macrosphere, let's say. So for the concluding remark, right now I am working on an upcoming video on my main channel about how women groom men, as this is not only possible, but the very act of mothers, both literally and metaphorically grooming their sons, is such a perennial act that it also works as a very interesting meta-narrative to explain an emergence of ego consciousness, since the Oedipus complex is mostly understood in a very narrow way. And if you combine Oedipus complex with neuropsychology, executive dysfunction, and how rational consciousness structure emerged out of mythic, poetic, pre-rational Mycenaean Greece to a form of calculative, abstract Euclidean consciousness structure, and how it is generally connected to a destruction of goddess cults and destruction of agrarian deities, you'll realize that mostly what underlies the superficial strata of politics, of science, of philosophy is something that goes deep into collective psyches of certain cultures. So I guess Mama's Boy will give you a first-hand analysis of this problem.